Hello and welcome to Bordenow's TV Reviews, and on this video I return to Tales of the City, the Netflix revival of the miniseries. So this is going to be episode 2 and the episode is called She Messy. So yes, it's been ages since I've done one of these. So just to recap, I was a bit mixed on the pilot, but overall I was actually quite positive on it, partly because I thought it had, quite a good look to it. I mean, generic look, yes, but I thought it was at least a higher class of soap, in the way it sort of looked, and the cast did bring something to it, particularly the lead cast. I wasn't so sure about some of the supporting characters. I wasn't sure if I was gonna get into their characters, as much. But the first review, I know got quite a few views, so I thought I'd keep it going because there was enough in the pilot to at least keep me watching. But I don't know how often I'll be doing these reviews, but I will stick with it. So, as I said, episode 2. And I wasn't so keen on this one. I think this is the one where the soapy elements really start to feel a bit more forced and a bit more telegraphed, and I think it feels a bit like, as you get more into the supporting characters, you think, well, you've got a big cast here, and is there really enough credibility with the supporting characters? I think obviously it's obviously bringing back, the classic characters that were big in the show originally, but also trying to introduce a new generation, which I think a revival like this has to do. But so far I'm not really getting into, at least not the supporting characters. But again, Anna Mary, played by Laura Linney, is sort of the focal point for a lot of the episode. So initially she was only in town for like this reunion, this gathering again at Barbary Avenue. But there's something sort of sticking with her, and she's essentially in the car with her husband, and there's a couple of sequences where he's feeling very awkward, and again it's kind of showing that he's a bit old-fashioned conservative when it comes to the thought of homosexuality and what have you, and it's obviously playing up the fact that she in her youth grew up here and she has a lot of friends, and that she has moved a lot more with the times and been more progressive because of her upbringing here, and we're sort of seeing more and more than her relationship with Robert just isn't a sticker, that they are actually very different people, or they seem like it in this episode. And so I mean, there's like a dinner sort of a date which is sort of sprung on them, and I mean throughout it's kind of telegraphing just how uncomfortable he is, how awkward he is. And I mean it's partly the fact that he's just too old-fashioned, too stiff and quite conservative, but just the fact that he does feel like a fish out of water. He doesn't know these people. He's used to a different surroundings. So he's just very much out of touch here and feeling the isolation. So I mean, although there are some really nasty negative moments with him, I think part of it you can sort of relate to, just because it's that feeling of feeling left out. Um, but so anyway, they're in the car at one point, and she just makes the decision, Mary Ann, that is, that she's or Anna Mary, sorry, then she's just got unfinished business with her adopted daughter, with Shauna, who of course is played by Ellen Page. Her and Michael, her adopted parents, and so obviously Anna Mary has revealed that, or reveals it, and yeah, she just feels like, she needs to tell Shauna the truth about that. So she has this unfinished business, and that obviously then really sets things off with Robert, because Robert, not just the fact that she feels she has to at least make things right with Shauna and tell her the truth, but I think Robert is just has this sense then she's being drawn back to this place, then she actually might never leave again, or then, yeah, she might stick around longer than she sort of promised. But anyway, there's a big line which suggests then she is pulling away from Robert, and that, her youth in the town has sort of drawn her back. And at one point when she's decided to stay, and she responds to him, and it's actually quite a clunky, sort of quite a preachy, soapy sort of line. She says, actually, I think I'm running towards, actually, because he accuses her of running away from something, running away from him particularly. And I mean, it works well enough in the scene, because Laura Linney is so good at grounding those moments and making it feel authentic. I mean, again, the quality of the cast, at least in the lead roles, does elevate this a bit from, just being sort of a disposable sort of soap opera. But yeah, so it works well enough because of Laura Linney, but it's still a pretty cheesy, awful line. But anyway, she obviously decides to stay and make amends with Shawnee, or tell her the truth. And Shawnee reacts very, very badly. And in fact, Michael sort of advises Mary Ann not to do this. And I mean, we see then Shawnee has her issues. She's very detached from things, and she resents Mary Ann, obviously, for moving on. And we find out that Mary Ann was really only with Shawnee and with Michael for basically a couple of years, and she later says, believe me, I was a good mother, at least for those 2 years. And it comes out then, yeah, she made the decision for career purposes to move, and she's obviously become, a star on television, in the media, and yeah, so she does feel very bad about that, but she was very young, and things didn't quite work out. But obviously, yeah, she's a very murky character in that way, but she is desperate to make amends with Shauna, who does have this quite punky sort of attitude. I mean, it's Ellen Page, she's always convincing in these sorts of roles. And there's another subplot with Michael and his boyfriend now, where, and again, I think this is playing on like a generation sort of thing where Michael doesn't feel comfortable, or he feels out of the loop with his younger boyfriend, and the boyfriend is actually going to a quiz night. And Michael is desperate to fit in and join in with his friends, so he wants to go to the quiz night. And it becomes quite a funny little thing because he feels he doesn't have the knowledge, because it might be quite a modern sort of quiz with a lot of questions he might not know. So he actually gets Shauna to help him bone up. So that stuff's quite funny, quite amusing. But yeah, again, it plays into that theme of the generational sort of divide. And we see Shauna, go with she goes to the quiz night, and she actually ends up going back with a couple sort of thing, and she actually has a threesome. But yeah, the next morning she's straight out there, or it's actually the same night. I think she leaves quite soon after the threesome. So again, we're seeing then she doesn't really get attached. She does enjoy kind of sleeping around and then moving on, if you like. She's kind of afraid of getting close to people, and that obviously plays into the awkward nature of the scenes with her mother. And so it's sort of at the end of the episode that Anne Mary, sort of asks quite respectfully, actually, for a few minutes of her time, or a minute, and she gives her like a record of a musical they listened to as a kid, or she listened to, that being Shauna, and that she always used to listen to. So it's quite a well played scene, because it shows Anna Mary, she doesn't take it for granted. I mean, she gives her this nice sort of gift, and there's not much response from Shauna, but I think there's the sense that she appreciates the thought, and that she is slowly becoming a bit more engaged, and probably than she would like some sort of relationship with her adopted mother. But I mean, it's a nice thought from Anne Mary, and the scene, because of the two actresses, is quite effective in how it plays. But so that's kind of the end of the episode. And we see a couple more friends of Anne Mary's throughout. But yeah, I mean, the episode's like an hour long, and that hour did sort of drag. I mean, some of the subplots just didn't really interest me that much. But yeah, there's sort of a lot of forced drama. But Anna gets a new lover, or a new love interest, let's say, and at this point she's not quite sure about him, or about his sort of reputation, and if he's going to be a solid guy. There seems to be a mystique to him. And again, it's another Olympia Dukakis, another solid performance. She really makes that character work, but it's some of the support characters around where either the acting just isn't there, or maybe they're just very maybe generic televisional type characters. And I mean, probably I think you know, in a way, it's not making any bones about being a soap, and I think now because it's a Netflix soap, and there's more money gone into it, I think it's a bit more high end production wise than the original series, but I mean, I still need to watch all of the original series. I've only seen a couple of episodes, and I had a soft spot because I think it was partly 90s nostalgia because there is something very 90s about it. And, you know, I do feel that sometimes if you have too much of a sheen, too much of a gloss on things, you can lose a bit of charm. You can lose a little something. Sometimes something being raw can actually make it a bit more engaging and likable. And it's probably just because I have a soft spot for the 90s and what have you. And I mean, again, I probably mentioned this in my first review, but I think sometimes now, I think because of the political landscape and what's been happening in America, I think sometimes putting stuff like this out there now can feel a bit too much like preachy, sort of liberal, you know, sort of really pushing. And I mean, obviously, yeah, I am a liberal guy, and I obviously, you know, I obviously subscribe to these values, but I also think sometimes, particularly in drama on TV, you do have to be, yeah, well, you don't have to be, but I guess what I'm saying is, when it's a value then I'm already invested in, and I already, you know, because to me it should be fairly obvious to say, yeah, all forms of sexuality, all forms of love and what have you, that's a good thing, and that's the way it should be. And yeah, sometimes it feels a bit like button pushing, a bit like, you know, ticking boxes, or and it just feels a bit telegraphed because of the era, you know. And you know, you still have to come up with good characters and good stories and all the rest of it. It's not just enough to put this out there because of what's happening in politics at the moment. Whereas the original show, I think, was free of that in a way. I mean, it was groundbreaking for the time, but yeah, it didn't feel like it was making a massive point, or it didn't feel like it was trying too hard. From what I've seen, I mean, I'm not saying it. I mean, it has problems, but it didn't feel preachy, and maybe this does feel a tad preachy at the moment, anyway. But I'll see. I mean, I think the main problem is just outside of the Laura Linney character and the quality of the lead cast. I'm not sure the other characters and the actors playing them are quite to that standard. I think that's probably my main problem so far. Um, and I think, yeah, maybe an hour, certainly for this episode, it did seem to really drag. But there you have it. That's my second review of Tales of the City. And I can't say when I'll watch another one, but it'll be quite soon, you know, because I think it is worth sticking with for now, and there seems to be a bit of an audience for it, so I will stick with it. But that's episode 2, which is called She Messy. And let me know your thoughts on the episode if you've seen it in the comments below. Like and subscribe and all that stuff if you haven't. And just to say, on the retro side of things, I am doing Buffy the Vampire Slayer reviews. I recently did the 6th episode of season 1, which is called The Pack. So that review's up if you want to take a look, if you're a Buffy fan. Certainly quite an interesting episode. And I also recently started on the Gilmore Girls, so that's another retro review. And speaking of Netflix show, just the other day I started Glow season 3, and that first episode, the review of it, is up now if you want to take a look at that. But thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.